We're recording. Good morning, Tracy and Frankie and Jody, whoever else might be joining us on YouTube. Someone commented on the YouTube, it was an address I didn't know. So if you join us and if we've not heard from you, let us know you've joined us, who you are. It's fun. We do have prayer before we jump on here in the morning. So if ever a prayer, just message us and we will add that to our list in the morning. All right. Are we on chapter 12?
Yes.
Chapter 12 at the beginning?
Yes.
Okay, because I have 33 kings defeated by Moses, so we must have started talking about it or something.
Worsby, whenever I was reading it, basically kind of covered, he covered.
Oh, that's maybe where it came from then.
Yeah,
Okay.
he covered 10 through 12,
Okay.
all in one little bit of, there isn't much on 12 at all.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and read that? Oh, yeah, there's like literally one little paragraph in Tony Evans. So we could read that quickly. We might be into 13 already today. Would someone like to read 12?
I can stumble over the words.
Thank you.
These are the kings of the land whom the Israelites had defeated and whose territory they took over east of the Jordan, from the Arnon Gorge to Mount Hermon, including all the eastern side of Arabah. Sihon, king of Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, he ruled from Aroer on the rim of Arnon Gorge, from the middle of the gorge to the Jabbok River, which is border of the Ammonites. This included half of Gilead. He also ruled over the eastern Arabah from the Sea of Kinnereth to the Sea of the Arabah, which it says in parentheses is the Salt Sea, to Beth Jesimoth, and then southward below the slopes of Pisgah.
No, what is he saying is this the Salt Sea, the Arabah?
Sea of Arabah.
Mine says that's the Dead Sea.
Yeah, so Arabah, not the Sea of Chinneroth, but Arabah.
Yeah.
Is the Salt Sea or the Dead Sea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Verse 4. And the territory of Og, king of Bashan, one of the last of the Rephates, who reigned in Ashtaroth and Edrei, he ruled over Mount Hermon, Selka, all of Bashan to the border of the people of Geshur and Maacah, and half of Gilead to the border of Sihon, king of Heshbon. Moses, the servant of the Lord, and the Israelites conquered them. And Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave their land to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh to be their possession.
Okay, so that would have been the west side or the east side. We had talked about this before. Because that group was already settled, and then they went and helped the other group settle and defeat those other countries.
How old is Joshua in all this?
I think he dies. I don't have my notebook here. I wrote it down. I want to say he died at 110. At the end, he was 110 years old. So
didn't we read somewhere he was 80 something?
Yes.
85 or
yeah.
At one point here, we did write that down. I wrote that down.
I don't know how long before this, but I don't think it's been real long. Verse 7. These are the kings of the land that Joshua and the Israelites conquered on the west side of the Jordan, from Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon to Mount Halak, which rises toward Seir, In parentheses, it says their lands Joshua gave as an inheritance to the tribes of Israel, or according to the tribal divisions. The hill country, the western foothills, the Arabah, the mountain slopes, the desert, and the Negev, lands of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites.
Well, the Jebusites turn into Jerusalem. So that would put them, if I'm looking at the map, it would put them to the left side of the Jordan. The rest of them go to the right.
To the west.
Yeah, so Jebusites turn into Jerusalem. So if you're looking at that map, Jerusalem's over here, then you have the Jordan. So it'd be the opposite of what I'm doing to you guys. And then on this side of the Jordan would be the land that they don't currently own all of it anymore.
Yeah, on my map, I have a map here in my Bible, and looking at it, it's on the Jebusites, which is Jerusalem. Looking at my map, it's on the left side of the Dead Sea.
So because I'm directionally challenged, would that be the east? Would
I
Jerusalem
would
be
say that would be the east.
the east of the Jordan?
Yes, I would say yes.
Would be what Moses took or what Joshua was taking.
12 starts out, kings defeated east of the Jordan. And then verse 7
Oh, west.
starts out west of the Jordan.
Good eye. Okay.
And west would be our left on this map. Like the left coast, like California
Yeah, yes, that's right.
coast.
You're right.
Yes.
Okay, so we are east with Moses. And west with George or Joshua. I don't know why I need to know these things. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
All right, then we're starting into verse 9, and it's just the king of Jericho, 1, the king of Ai near Bethel, 1, the king of Jerusalem, 1. I'm not sure what this means, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
The king of Jerusalem, 1, the king of Hebron, 1, the king of Jarmuth, 1, the king of Lachish, 1, the king of Eglon, 1, the king of Gezer, 1, the king of Debir, 1, the king of Gader, 1, the king of Hormah, 1, the king of Arad, 1, the king of Libnah, 1, the king of Adullam, 1, the king of Makeda, 1, the king of Bethel, 1, the king of Tupah, 1, king of Hepher, 1, the king of Aphek, 1, the king of Lasharon, 1, the king of Madon, 1, the king of Hazar, 1, the king of Shimron Meron, 1, the king of Akshaph, 1, the king of Tanakh, 1, the king of Megiddo, 1, the king of Kadesh, 1, the king of Jokneam in Carmel, 1, the king of Dor in Naphath Dor, 1, the king of Goyim in Gilgal, 1, the king of Tizar, 1, 31 kings in all.
Plus 2 with Moses would be the 33 total.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, very good.
Told you I'd stumble through the words.
There were a lot there.
Chrissy, what did you say? Plus
So-
the two.
The 2 kings that they took with Moses when Moses was leading them. If you add them in,
Okay.
that makes a total of 33 kings.
Okay.
Which just as a reminder of what it said in Worsby about the 33 kings, it says 33 kings are named in Joshua 12, beginning with Sihon and Og, whose lands were east of the Jordan and had been conquered under the leadership of Moses. The 16 kings defeated in the southern campaign are listed in Joshua 12, 9-16, and the 15 northern kings in verses 17-24.
And you already read Worsby on that, right?
Yeah, that was part of it there that I just reread.
Okay, Cindy, does John have anything on that,
Little bit.
chapter 12?
Overview 12, 1-24. The kings defeated. The actual list of 31 kings conquered in verse 24 follows and fills out the summary of the whole land. The roster shows 1. The kings whom Moses defeated east of the Jordan River earlier. Then 2. Those whom Joshua conquered west of the Jordan River, a summary. Central kings, verse 9. Southern kings, verses 10-16. And northern kings, verses 17-24.
Can we say that again? Because that's what also Worsby had just said, so I feel like it's important. What were they again?
The roster shows the kings whom Moses defeated east of the Jordan River earlier, verses 1-6. Then, 2, those whom Joshua conquered west of the Jordan River, a summary, verses 7 and 8. Central kings, verse 9. Southern kings, 10-16.
Okay, hang on.
And
Central Kings. What was 7 and 8
Verse 9.
overview?
7-8, a summary.
Okay, and then 9 was Central Kings.
Yes. And
Okay.
then Southern kings, 10-16. And then Northern kings, 17-24. 12-24. The conquest of all these kings, covering areas up and down, quotes, the whole land, was caused by the Lord's faithful help, which fulfilled his word. God promised the land in his covenant with Abraham. Reference Genesis 12:7. And reaffirmed that he would give victory in conquest. Reference Joshua 1, 3, and 6. And that's it.
Okay, my 1-24 is very short. It says chapter 12 offers a list of all the kings defeated by Israel in the promised land. Future generations would read it and know that these stories were not fairy tales. They were history. The name of each king provides confirmation to readers of how heaven has acted in earth's history to punish hardened sinners and to bring about God's agenda for his people. I think the other thing too we got to remember is that it's actually God who won these wars. I think like one of the things that we really need to pay attention to is the history, because God gives it to us for a reason and it always will repeat itself. Okay, and then also I did find over in chapter 14, verse 10, it says, I am this day 85 years old. So that must have been Worsby the other day when we read that. So chapter 14, verse 10 is where he said how old he was. And so then he dies at 110 by the end of the book.
How old did you say he was?
He's in verse 14, chapter 10, or chapter 14, verse 10, he says, I am this day 85 years old. But at the end of Joshua, it says he was 110 when he died.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right, chapter 13 is fairly short. I have a break at 7. And it's 10 after. So why don't we just do through 7? And then move on. Do you want me to read it? Now Joshua was old and advanced in years, and the Lord said to him, "You are old and advanced in years." And
Hold
there,
on a minute, Chrissy. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I want to read this little overview to dividing the promised land. It
Okay.
starts with 13.
Sure.
After 7 years of battle, Israel gained control of the land, which was then divided and allotted to the tribes. Joshua dismissed the army, for it was now each tribe's responsibility to clear out the remaining enemies from their own areas. Joshua continues to encourage the people to remain faithful to God so they can remain in the land. The promised land was Israel's earthly inheritance, but Israel also had a spiritual inheritance in which we can share when we live a life of faithfulness to God.
Did it
I
say
thought-
that those battles only took 7 years?
After 7 years of battle, yeah, we have that written down too.
Yeah, but in 11, is that because in 11 it was talking about that?
11 had, I wrote down 7 years
Mm-hmm.
in my notes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I just thought that was interesting.
Well, I find it interesting that it's left up to the tribes then.
I was
Figure it
thinking the
out.
same thing, Cindy. I'm like, wow, this is when they're kind of left to themselves and on their own faithfulness.
Which that could vary, you know? It's kind of like we have the United States, each state varies. It's like they were really united. And then now they're kind of in different sectors.
Yeah. I thought this is the beginning of the mess now. Now it really gets messy. That's what I was thinking, but I don't know.
Told Stan the other day, I said if Texas falls out, which they keep threatening to do and have for years, there will be a bunch of other ones that leave the Union of the United States too.
Who are they? Who'd you say they were?
If Texas has threatened
Oh,
to leave the United States for years. I mean,
yeah.
they pride themselves on Texas. All right, you ready for me to read then? Any other notes? Anything else? All right, 13:1. Now Joshua was old and advanced in years, and the Lord said to him, "You are old and advanced in years, and there remains very much land to possess. This is the land that yet remains." Oh, here we go. There was still remaining land. That's what he was talking about. All the regions of the Philistines and those of the Geshurites from Seor, which is east of Egypt, northward to the boundary of Ekron. It is counted as Canaanite. There are 5 rulers of the Philistines, those of Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron, and those of them. In the south, all the land of the Canaanites and Mira, which belongs to the Sidonians, to Ephek, to the boundary of the Amorites, and the land of the Gibeonites, and all Lebanon, toward the sunrise. So it'd be toward the east, right?
Mm-hmm.
Toward the sunrise. From Baal-Gad below Mount Hermon to Lebo Hamath, all the inhabitants of the hill country from Lebanon to Misrephoth Maim, even all the Sidonians, I myself will drive them out from the people of Israel. Before the people of Israel, sorry. I myself will drive them out before the people of Israel. Only allot the land to Israel for an inheritance, as I have commanded you. Now therefore, divide this land for an inheritance to the 9 tribes and the half tribe of Manasseh. So they took all those kings, but still had all this to go. Apparently. Cindy, what you got for 1 through 7?
I'm ready. 13:1. Joshua was old. By this time, he was about 95. In comparison to Caleb's 85 years. In 23:1, he was 110 and near death. 13:1 and 2. Very much land. Some land had not yet actually been occupied by the Israelites through the previous general victories. Pockets of land in chapter 13, 2-6, still lay untouched by specific invasion and occupation. When Joshua allotted areas to individuals and tribes, they assumed the challenge to drive out lingering resistors. If not, they would disobey God's mandate to be resolute in conquest. Reference Deuteronomy 11, 22, and 23. Failure to do this thoroughly is a tragic theme in Judges 1. 13:3, Sihor, probably related to the Nile River, possibly a name for that river or an eastern tributary of it. The name could also refer to a seasonal rain trough, which runs to the Mediterranean, the Wadi al-Arish in the desert south of Palestine, northeast of Egypt. 13:7, divide this land. God commanded Joshua to devise allotments within boundaries for inheritances, as he had prepared for earlier. Joshua announced divisions made clear by lot to tribes east of the Jordan, tribes west of the Jordan. Caleb, his own area, cities of refuge, and Levite towns.
I
That's
wonder why
it.
they're bringing up Caleb separately. What he said something about Caleb earlier. Caleb was, so Joshua was how old here, did he say?
He
90?
said 95, and Caleb was 85. It
The
gives
reference for
yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
no, you go ahead, Cindy.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
The reference for Caleb being 85 is the 14:10.
Oh, okay.
Well, and then the other reference, I don't know, I'm assuming is regarding his own area. It says Caleb, his own area, 19:49-51. Now look at that.
19.
49-51. Let me see. That's just talking about the allotments, but it doesn't say Caleb. Not that I can see. Oh, where am I? Yeah, 19, yeah, I don't, it gives the allotments.
Chrissy, you just read 13, 1 through 7, right?
Yeah.
I have an interesting footnote. That doesn't. Huh. So this 13:2, it says the following chapters described how the promised land was divided among the 12 tribes. First, the tribe of Levi was not to have any land because they were to spend all their energy serving the people, not their own interests. Second, the tribes of Reuben and Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh had already received land east of the Jordan River, which had been given to them by Moses in Numbers. Third, the tribes of Judah and Joseph, Ephraim and the other half tribe of Manasseh received land that their ancestor Jacob had promised them 450 years earlier in Genesis. The rest of the tribes divided up the remaining land by throwing sacred dice. In Jacob's original blessing of his sons, and in Moses' blessing of the 12 tribes, the type of land each tribe would receive was already known. The two blessings were prophetic, for although Joshua threw dice to determine the land to be given to each of the remaining tribes, the allotments came out just as Jacob and Moses had predicted. I thought that was interesting.
Oh, it gave references for that? Were they predicted?
It just says where they threw the dice.
Did it give a reference for that?
Yes. Throwing sacred dice. That's not until chapter 18. But this footnote was all in reference 13:2. Anyway,
But
I
it
thought
said as they so who predicted? Moses and Joshua?
Moses and Jacob. So back in, it's just saying that
Well,
back
Jacob
in,
would have been, yeah, where was that at? Because Jacob would have been back before they went to Egypt.
right. So back at Moses must have given his prophetic,
Numbers 32. I think
yes,
it says there, Kim.
yes, Numbers 32.
In Numbers 32.
That's where Moses gave his prophetic determination. And then 400 Genesis 48:22.
40,
And then it also
22.
yes,
that-
and then it also
is that
references
Jacob?
that is yes, Jacob. Jacob's original blessing of his son. Oh no, yeah. And in Moses' blessing of the 12 tribes. Okay, then it goes on to say about the original blessing in Genesis 49.
But so when Moses and Jacob said the tribes would get this land, that was in Numbers 32 and Genesis 48.
Yes, and then also when Jacob gave his original blessing, it may have referenced the lands that he was going to receive when Ephraim would have been Genesis 49 for when he blessed his sons.
Mm-hmm.
That's Genesis 49, and Moses's blessing on the 12 tribes was Deuteronomy 33.
Okay, but like when it says Numbers 32, Moses, how does that worded? Moses predicted, Moses named?
I think all of those verses reference the lands and how they would be divided.
Okay. And then
Well-
here they threw, even though they already had that predicted, they threw the holy dice or whatever, and it worked
Yeah.
out to exactly what they said.
Yeah.
Okay, so where was the dice thrown? Chapter.
Chapter 18, Joshua 18.
And then Numbers 34:16, the Lord said to Moses, Eleazar the priest and Joshua son of Nun are the men designated to divide the grants of land among the people. Enlist one leader from each tribe to help them with the task. And it gave the tribes and the name of the leaders. And Caleb was the leader of Judah. Anyway, it mentions all of them, and then it says, these are the men the Lord has appointed to divide the grants of land in Canaan among the Israelites. That's Numbers 34:16. 16 to 29.
It's just amazing how we read something, we've already read Deuteronomy and Numbers, and then here we are, chapters, you keep going and here we are in Joshua, and it's going back to what we've already read, but it's just so hard to recall all of that. It's all so intertwined, but it's
What I find really interesting is you have Joseph, was it Joseph? Jacob, originally the father of the 12 tribes, who said this was going to be how it was going to be. Then you have Moses, at least 80 years later, probably a lot more, saying the same thing. Then you have these guys going here, where they're however many years later, hundreds of years later, 100 years later, who throw dice,
yeah.
and it works out exactly the way the two prophetically said before, and they are still arguing over who owns that land today.
Well, I'm wondering if they even knew. Would they have remembered or known somehow without going back and reading, just like we are, that, oh, you know what? Jacob and Moses already told us how the land's going to
Well,
be
it was
divided.
written down. The book,
let's just-
the Pentateuch was written down, so
But they probably didn't read it. Let's just do it the way Jacob and Moses said it was going to happen.
yeah.
But no, they did it by throwing dice. I'm just thinking they did not know. But the Bible is bringing it to our attention. All these references are telling us this is how they did it. But lo and behold, if they'd have just read what was recorded,
Yeah.
they already
They
had
need
their
to-
answers.
Maybe they need to throw dice again. See if it comes out that way
they
the
really
third time.
believe, and they're right. Their father is Abraham also. So it's really hard. Like if they look at it and like, well, the nations was promised to our father, Abraham. He's, you know what I mean? Like he is the father of both nations. So I can see where the other side takes this ownership too. Okay, so Cindy, did you read all of your 1 through 7?
Yes. Yes.
Is Worsby long on this, or is he short?
He kind of has it all thrown together again, like chapters 13 to 21.
Oh,
And then, let me see here. For chapter 13, it looks like he has it broke down in verses 1 to 33. He doesn't have a,
all right. Why don't I read Tony, and then tomorrow we'll read him, because I was afraid that was going to happen. Like, because all these are them getting their land. We're going to move through that very quickly.
Yeah.
So I'll read Tony, and then tomorrow morning we'll go to Worsby, because it's probably going to be a good bit longer. 1 through 7, there was still much land that remained for the Israelites to acquire, and Joshua had become very old by this point. Nevertheless, God promised to drive out the remaining peoples before Israel. Therefore, in the light of God's promise, Israel was to divide the promised land as an inheritance among the tribes. The end. So tomorrow we'll pick up with Worsby. This concludes the reading of God's word for today. Everybody better be praying on where we're going next, because it's moving very quickly. All right, ladies, and tomorrow